The desert was quiet in a way that felt almost unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Soft winds moved across the empty sands, carrying dust that sparkled faintly beneath the pale moonlight. Walked alone through this silent world, each step slow, heavy, and tired. His clothes were torn, his boots worn down, and his face carried the exhaustion of a man who had traveled far without hope of rest. The invasion had changed everything. Months ago, he was an ordinary man with ordinary dreams. He worked in a small town, lived in a tiny apartment, and believed his life would stay simple forever. But then the sky cracked open and the alien empire arrived. Towers of fire fell from the heavens, cities vanished, mountains burned. The world he knew was destroyed in a single night. Now wandered through the remains of that world. He walked not because he had a destination, but because stopping meant accepting that everything was truly gone. He had survived the fall of his city. He had survived the loss of everyone he cared about. But survival did not feel like victory. It felt like a burden pressing on his soul. He lifted his head and stared at the sky. Strange purple lights danced across it, signs of alien ships moving silently far above the clouds. They seemed like predators watching him from a great distance. He wondered if they saw him as anything more than a small insect crawling across dead land. Yet deep inside him, a spark still lived. Humans were stubborn creatures. Even broken, they kept moving. As continued walking, the night changed. The air grew warmer, heavier. He felt something shift around him, as if the desert itself had woken from sleep. The hairs on his arms rose. His heartbeat quickened without reason. Then he saw it. A tear of white-blue light opened in the sky, stretching wide like a wound in reality. It pulsed, shivered, and then ripped open completely. Something massive pushed through, a ship shaped like a falling star, glowing with silver flames that cast long shadows across the sand. Stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The ground trembled as the ship descended, sending waves of dust rolling across the desert. Its metallic surface shone like liquid moonlight, smooth and alive. No human ship had ever looked like this. It was too elegant, too perfect, too terrifying. The ship landed with a deep, echoing thud that shook the air. A large ramp extended slowly, releasing a cold, shimmering mist. His breath tightened in his chest. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to disappear, but he couldn't move. He felt pulled forward, drawn by a force he couldn't explain. From the glowing mist, a figure stepped out. She was tall, graceful, and radiant in a way that made his heart stop. Her hair flowed like silver water down her back. Her skin glowed faintly as if touched by starlight. Her eyes burned gold, not warm gold, but sharp and powerful, like fire trapped inside crystal. She didn't look like a soldier or a monster. She looked like royalty, dangerous royalty. Felt an invisible pressure settle on his shoulders, pushing him down. Not physical pressure, something deeper, something that touched the mind. She was not just looking at him, she was entering his thoughts, searching, examining, exploring. Her voice did not move through the air, it moved inside him. Bow before me, human, and surrender your soul to your alien queen. The words slid into his mind like silk dipped in poison. Beautiful, soft, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. His knees trembled, his breath caught, and he felt something inside him pull toward her, an instinct to obey, to kneel, to give up his will. He almost fell. Almost. But then another feeling rose inside him. Anger, stubbornness, the old human fire that refused to die. He clenched his fists. He forced his legs to stay straight. With every bit of strength left in him, he lifted his head and met her golden eyes. "I don't bow to invaders," he whispered. For a moment the desert froze. Even the wind grew silent. The alien queen's golden eyes widened, not with rage, but with surprise. She stepped closer, her gaze locked on him, studying him as if he were something rare, something impossible. In that moment, understood something. He was not just another human to her. He was a challenge. And she was not used to being challenged. The desert night held its breath again, waiting for what would happen next, stood his ground as the golden eyes of the alien queen studied him. The air between them seemed to hum, heavy with power he could barely comprehend. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, tall, elegant, dangerous. Yet in those eyes he saw something unexpected, curiosity. Not fear, not anger, but something that felt almost alive. She circled him slowly, each step measured, deliberate. The sand beneath her feet shifted as if acknowledging her presence. Felt the weight of her gaze pressing into his chest, yet he refused to bow. His legs trembled, but he forced himself upright, gripping his backpack tightly. He had survived worse. He would survive this too. "You are human," she said, her voice flowing directly into his mind like honey, soft but sharp. "Fragile, weak, yet you do not kneel. Why?" Swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, the desert wind doing little to help. He wanted to speak, wanted to explain that stubbornness was part of being human, but he simply said, "Because someone has to stand." Her golden eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in thought. She paused, studying him more closely than she had any other human she had ever captured. Her empire had conquered thousands of worlds. She had bent countless species to her will. She had never met one who resisted her command so calmly, so quietly. "You are not afraid?" she asked, her voice soft but dangerous. Laughed quietly, a sound rough and uneven. "Afraid? Maybe, but I don't let fear make my choices for me." He took a step forward, defiant. "You may be powerful, but you don't own my will. You never will." The queen stopped, tilting her head slightly. A faint smile touched her lips, almost human in its subtlety. "Interesting," she whispered. "No human has ever spoken to me like this. They obey, they surrender, they beg. You do not. You are damaged." She paused and then added, "Yet admirable." Blinked, her words were strange, confusing. Damage and admiration were not things that usually went together. But he felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in weeks. A tiny spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't like the others. Maybe he could understand her, even if she was an alien queen. "You will come with me," she said suddenly, stepping back. Her command was not just a suggestion, it carried the weight of 1,000 worlds. Stiffened but did not move. "You will not take me," he said firmly. "I'm not yours." Her eyes flickered, a faint glow of fire in them. Then she smiled, and it was terrifying. "We shall see," she purred. "I will not force your body, not yet, but your mind." She let the words hang in the air, a promise and a warning. Without another word, she turned and walked back toward her ship. Had no choice but to follow. Each step toward the massive craft was heavy, yet he felt strangely alive. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet part of him wanted to see more, to understand this creature who called herself a queen. Once aboard, the ship was nothing like he had imagined. The walls shimmered like liquid silver, and the corridors seemed to hum with energy. It was alive, breathing. Soldiers moved silently, all watching him with cautious curiosity, but none dared approach the queen while she walked beside him. The name he somehow learned without hearing it aloud stopped in a large room filled with strange, glowing panels. She turned to him, golden eyes fixed on his face. "Tell me," she said softly, almost tenderly, "why do humans fight when the outcome is already clear? Why do you resist the inevitable?" Looked at her, he wanted to answer honestly, but words felt too small, too weak. Finally, he said, "Because we are alive, because giving up is easy but living is hard, because even if we lose, we try. Someone has to. That's what it means to be human." Studied him, her expression unreadable. For the first time, her posture relaxed slightly. She was powerful, terrifying, almost untouchable, yet here she was, listening to a single human tell her about hope. Saw something flicker in her eyes, longing, loneliness, and maybe even respect. For a moment, the vast emptiness of space outside the ship felt like it didn't exist. There were only two beings in that room, a human who refused to kneel, and a queen who had never known anyone who dared to defy her. Felt a strange connection to her, something he couldn't explain. He did not trust her, not yet, but he felt hope. For the first time since the invasion, he believed that maybe, just maybe, the impossible could happen, that a human could stand not only against an empire, but also touch the heart of a queen. His gaze softened just a little. Her golden eyes no longer burned with only command. They flickered with curiosity, with questions she had never dared to ask before. And in that moment understood something fundamental. This queen, this alien, was more than her empire. She was a being who could learn, she could feel. And maybe, if he survived, she could change. The desert night, the alien empire, the fear and destruction, all of it faded in that single electric moment. Two lives, human and alien, connected by defiance, curiosity, and the fragile spark of understanding. And realized with both fear and thrill that his life was about to change forever, spent the first night aboard ship in silence. The corridors shimmered like liquid silver, humming with energy he could feel in his bones. Soldiers moved silently past him, eyes alert, weapons ready, but they kept their distance. None dared approach the human who had the queen. Herself stayed close, though she did not speak much. Sometimes she would walk beside him, observing him with those golden eyes that seemed to see everything. Notice small things, how she moved with grace, how her presence filled the room with quiet power, and how, despite all her authority, there was a loneliness in her that almost hurt to see. He was not a prisoner in the usual sense. She gave him food, water, and space to move, but every action he took was watched. Every word, every step seemed measured and catalogued by her. It was as if she was trying to understand something beyond his body, something deeper, something human. The next day, she summoned him to a large chamber filled with glowing panels, maps of planets, and models of ships. His voice slid into his mind as she spoke, smooth and soft, yet commanding. "Humans are curious," she said. "Why do you fight even when the outcome is clear? Why do you cling to life when death is inevitable?" Hesitated, he wanted to answer honestly, but the question felt heavier than the weight of her gaze. Finally, he said, "Because living is the only choice we have. Giving up is easy, but living is hard. Even if we lose, even if everything burns, we try. That's what makes us human." Was silent for a long time. The golden fire in her eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by something softer, almost thoughtful. For the first time, she seemed not like an alien queen, but like a creature trying to understand a world she had never known. Over the following days, she questioned him endlessly, not about weapons, strategy, or Earth's defenses, but about humanity itself. Why humans loved, why humans fought, why humans endured loss and still rose again. Answered each question, his voice steady, sometimes trembling, always honest. And with each answer, he felt a strange connection forming. He realized she was lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being far from home, but the kind that comes from being the most powerful being in the galaxy, with no one to see her as more than a queen. She had an empire that obeyed her, soldiers who feared her, worlds that trembled at her name, but no one who truly understood her. One night, while repaired a small drone she had taken from a destroyed Earth city, she approached him silently. Her hair glowed like silver fire, and her golden eyes reflected the soft light of the workshop. She knelt beside him, voice barely a whisper. "I was not created for mercy," she said. "I was shaped to rule, to conquer, to command. I was not made to understand humans." Looked up at her. For the first time, he saw vulnerability beneath the perfection, beneath the power. "Maybe understanding isn't something you were created for," he said, "but it's something you can choose. Everyone can choose." She paused, staring at him as if weighing his words against centuries of certainty. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, You are not afraid." "I have been afraid," admitted. "Every day, but I don't let fear decide my actions. Humans survive because we fight, because we hope, because we care even when it hurts. You can choose to care too." Remained silent after that, but noticed subtle changes. She asked fewer questions about destruction, fewer questions about conquest. She walked the ship without guards more often, as if she wanted to feel something real, something human. She seemed drawn to life itself, observing it, testing it, as if trying to discover whether it was worth understanding. Could not explain the feelings stirring inside him. Fear and respect mixed with a strange warmth, a curiosity about her beyond the danger she represented. He had survived the invasion, he had survived the desert, but now he realized the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not her power. It was the possibility that he could touch her heart, even slightly, and maybe change the course of the war without even raising a weapon. And in the quiet moments when the stars outside the ship shone like distant fires, understood something profound. The alien queen who demanded obedience from the galaxy was not a monster. She was a being who could feel. She was a being who could change. And for the first time, he allowed himself to hope, not just for survival, but for something more. The chains of fear that had bound them both, him to death, her to power, were invisible, but they were there. And somewhere deep inside, both human and queen wondered if they had the courage to break them. Days aboard ship passed like strange, heavy dreams. Walked the corridors, still under her watchful gaze, yet slowly he began to notice subtle changes. The queen was no longer just a figure of fear. She was learning, observing, trying to understand the human spirit he carried with him. Saw her moments of quiet reflection when no one else was near. Sometimes she would stare out of the viewport at distant stars, her hands clasped behind her back, her golden eyes flickering with thoughts he could not read. He realized she was lonely, more lonely than any conqueror should ever be. Her empire obeyed her without question, her soldiers feared her, but no one knew her beyond her title. No one had ever challenged her the way he did, and in that challenge she seemed almost human. One evening he found her watching him repair a damaged drone. Sparks flew from the delicate circuits, but his hands moved with precision, steady and calm. She tilted her head, golden eyes glowing softly. You care for machines that are not yours, she said, voice like silk slipping into his mind. Looked up at her. Someone has to fix the world, he said simply. Even the small things matter. She knelt beside him, her hair cascading over her shoulders, silver like flowing water. The glow from the panels reflected in her eyes, and for a moment she looked vulnerable, more than any queen had a right to look. I was not created for mercy, she whispered. I was shaped to rule, to conquer, to dominate. I was not made for tenderness or care. You can choose it, said, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. You are not bound by what you were made for. You can choose how to be. Her eyes met his, and he saw the fire of command waver, replaced by something softer. For the first time, she did not look like a queen. She looked like a being trying to understand herself, trying to find something beyond power. The air between them was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Felt it, the fragile thread connecting them. Fear, curiosity, respect, and something else that neither dared name. In the quiet moments when the hum of the ship was the only sound, he realized that they were both prisoners of their own choices. He, a human clinging to hope. She, a queen trapped by duty. Over the next days began to change in small ways. She walked through the ship without guards more often. She asked fewer questions about conquest and more about life, about feelings, about human resilience. She lingered near him during work, watching him carefully but without the weight of command. One night, as stars streaked past the viewport, she spoke quietly. Humans, you are so fragile, yet you endure. You are small, yet your hearts burn brighter than the fires of my worlds. I do not understand it. You will, said softly. It's not about understanding everything. It's about seeing, noticing, and choosing to act. That's what makes humans strong. Remained silent for a long time. Her golden eyes softened, her lips barely moving. Felt hope stir within him, not just for himself, but for her. If she could see the human spirit, even a little, perhaps she could change. Perhaps she could choose something beyond empire and conquest. Then came the first real smile. A faint, almost imperceptible curve of her lips as she watched him work on a broken console. It was the smallest gesture, but too, it was monumental. The queen had smiled. Not at power, not at victory, but at a single human who refused to bow. The days turned into nights, and their connection grew quietly, without words sometimes, without forced explanations. Taught her small things, how to repair broken things, how to notice tiny details that mattered, how to look at life not as conquest, but as something fragile and beautiful. And slowly he realized something astonishing. She was learning, she was feeling, she was changing. One evening, as the ship glided past a belt of distant stars, placed her hand lightly on the edge of his workbench. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. You make me question everything I thought I knew about life. Looked up, meeting her golden gaze. Then question it, he said. It is never too late to choose differently. For the first time, she did not issue commands. She did not demand obedience. She simply watched him, and in that silent gaze, a spark ignited, something fragile, something human. In that spark, both realized the impossible. They could change each other. The queen of a conquered galaxy and a lone human wanderer, standing together in a quiet room filled with flickering light, discovering something stronger than fear, stronger than power, and stronger than destiny itself. The human spark that could ignite even the coldest heart. The days on ship passed with a strange rhythm. Could feel the subtle shift in the queen, the way her posture softened, the way her voice lost some of its harsh authority when she spoke to him. But the calm was fragile. The empire she commanded was vast, ruthless, and intolerant of hesitation. The high lords whispered among themselves, watching with suspicion. Rumors reached her through encrypted channels. Fleets were moving, loyal generals demanding action, soldiers expecting punishment for their failure to capture or destroy a single human. They questioned her judgment. They warned her that keeping alive was dangerous. They demanded she prove her loyalty or face replacement. Stood in her private chamber, the message in her hands, the glow of distant stars falling across her face. Watched her silently. He had seen many things during the invasion, fires, destruction, despair, but nothing compared to this moment, the raw weight of leadership pressing on someone who had never been alone before. They will destroy me if I do not kill you, she whispered, the words trembling, almost fragile. Her golden eyes, so powerful, looked smaller now, as though the weight of choice had become a living thing pressing down on her shoulders. And if you do kill me? Asked quietly, his voice calm, almost steady in the storm around them. I will lose myself, she said. Her gaze fell to the floor. I will be the queen the Empire expects, but I will no longer be me. Stepped closer, the soft hum of the ship beneath them carrying the weight of the silent universe. Then don't lose yourself, he said. Not for them, not for anyone, you get to choose, always. Looked at him, and for the first time her golden eyes betrayed her fear. Not of him, not of death, but of the emptiness that obedience could bring. You don't understand. I am a queen. I was born to rule your kind, to bend worlds to my will. This is what I am supposed to be. Maybe what you are supposed to be, said voice low, is something else entirely. Maybe what you really want is someone to see you, not the Empire, not the power, you. The words hung in the air between them, fragile as glass. Hands clenched at her sides. She had never been offered this choice before. Her empire demanded obedience, her soldiers demanded loyalty, her people demanded fear, but he demanded nothing except her own truth. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The hum of the ship was louder than their voices. Then her eyes met his, and something shifted. The fire returned to them, not the cold fire of conquest, but a warmer, fiercer spark, one that seemed to defy centuries of expectation. I choose myself, she said finally, her voice low but steady. The words were a command, but not to anyone but herself. They carried defiance, courage, and the promise of change. His heart surged. He knew the Empire would not accept this. Rebellion would follow, fleets would arrive, soldiers would attack, and generals would come to claim her throne. But for this moment, she was free. She turned to the ship's officers, her voice rising, filled with authority again, but different now. Prepare the shields, prepare the engines, we escape. No one follows orders but me. Gasps filled the room. Whispers of mutiny echoed. Some officers hesitated, some shook their heads, but none dared challenge her. She was the queen, yes, but now she was not only commanding ships and soldiers, she was commanding her own destiny. Stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her arm. It's not too late, he whispered. You don't have to follow their rules, you can be something more. His eyes softened, and she allowed herself a small smile, almost human in its vulnerability. Something more, she repeated, testing the words, tasting them. The words felt strange, heavy, and freeing all at once. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. The galaxy waited with bated breath. Inside the ship, a queen and a human stood together, facing a choice no one had ever dared make. One decision could destroy her empire. One decision could change everything. But she chose herself. And in that choice saw something he had never expected. The power of humanity reflected in the eyes of an alien queen. Not fear, not obedience, but courage, compassion, hope. The Empire may come, the fleets may arrive, the war may rage on, but for the first time was not just a queen, she was alive. And she would fight for herself, and for the possibility of something better. The warning lights on ship blared, shaking the quiet calm that had settled in the command deck. His heart raced as he watched the stars outside twist and blur with the sudden acceleration of enemy fleets. The High Lords of the Empire had arrived, massive ships blotting out the void like moving shadows. Their message was clear: must die, and the queen must prove her loyalty or perish alongside him. Stood at the viewport, her hands pressed lightly against the shimmering glass. The glow from the incoming ships reflected in her golden eyes, sharp and bright, but her posture was not one of panic. She was tense, yes, but there was something else, something human. A flicker of choice, of defiance, of courage born not from duty, but from the spark that had ignited inside her. Stepped beside her, the hum of the ship beneath them vibrating through his boots. You still have a choice, he said quietly, meeting her gaze. You don't have to obey them, you can choose yourself. His eyes met his, burning with intensity. Her chest rose and fell as if she were weighing the weight of worlds on her shoulders. If I fight them, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, I break my empire, they will call me traitor, they will take everything from me. And if you do, asked softly but firmly, if you let them take you. Her head dropped, then I break myself. Silence filled the command deck. The stars outside moved, distant and indifferent. Could feel the hum of the enemy fleet, the cold logic of the Empire closing in, and yet all he saw was her struggle, her choice, her humanity. He stepped closer. Then don't break, he said. Not for them, not for anyone, be yourself. That is stronger than any fleet, stronger than any empire. For a long moment she did not move. The weight of her crown, real or imagined, pressed on her like stone. But then, slowly, her chin lifted. The fire returned to her eyes, not the cold fire of conquest, but the warm, fierce fire of life, of courage, of freedom. I choose myself, she said, her voice ringing out over the command deck, steady and sure. Prepare shields, prepare engines, we escape. Obey no one but me. Gasps filled the room. Officers whispered in shock. Some hesitated. Some stared at her in disbelief. But no one dared challenge the queen who had ruled countless worlds with an iron will. Her power was absolute, yes, but now it was more than that. It was alive, human, and terrifying in its certainty. Felt a thrill run through him. He had never seen such strength, strength not from weapons, not from soldiers, not from empire, but from choice, from courage, from defiance, from the human spark that refused to bow. Outside, the enemy fleet unleashed its first salvo. Energy beams streaked past the ship, shattering space with explosions of light. The deck shook. Warning sirens screamed. Soldiers rushed to their posts, following orders with renewed intensity. She moved through the command center like a storm, calm, precise, and alive. Watched her awe and fear mingling. The queen who had demanded his soul weeks ago was now fighting for life. Her life, his life, and perhaps something more fragile, more beautiful, the possibility of freedom. Through the chaos, gaze met his again. There was no fear there, only determination, only trust, only the unspoken promise that they would survive together if they could. The ship darted through enemy fire, shields blazing, engines screaming, clung to the rails, feeling the trembling of the hull beneath his hands. Explosions shook the corridors and alarms filled the air. Yet through it all remained focused, commanding, alive. Every decision, every movement was precise, alive with intent. For the first time, realized something profound. Humanity had taught her courage. Humanity had taught her hope. And perhaps even in the heart of the alien queen, the human spark, the stubborn, fragile, unstoppable spark, was beginning to take root. Finally, after what felt like hours, the enemy fleet's numbers thinned. Through cunning, speed, and sheer audacity had broken the blockade. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, silent and calm once more. The ship drifted into a quiet region of space, battered but alive. Looked at her chest still racing. "You did it," he said softly. "You survived, you chose yourself." Turned to him, golden eyes glowing softly now. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "Yes," she whispered. "I survived because of hope, because of you." In that quiet moment, amid the hum of the ship and the distant stars, understood the impossible. An alien queen had chosen life over empire. A human had reminded her of courage, and together they had the galaxy itself. The rebellion might come again, the war might rage on. But for now, in the endless void, the impossible had happened. Two hearts, human and alien, had found a spark strong enough to challenge fate.